All right, guys, we're back in the garage. Part 3 of K-Swap Your Fit. And, well, I kind of forgot to film some stuff the last couple days, and here's where we're at. Hello. Anyway, no, that's my brother's car. Mine's still over here with an empty engine bay and a K-Series ready to go in. But a couple things I did in the meantime. I did fill the rear mount and the transmission mount with polyurethane. I like to use the 3M window weld is what it actually is called. There's the part number 08609. And it's pretty simple. There's tons of videos on how to do this. People have been doing this forever. What I like to do is just wire brush, brake clean these mounts up really good. The rubber, like clean the rubber up. And then what I like to do is squirt a bunch of the window weld out onto some cardboard. And then I take a small brush and I brush it all inside the grooves or wherever it needs to go on both sides. And what that does is it coats the rubber that you want the polyurethane to stick to. And then when you go and start squirting all this polyurethane in there, it actually bonds to itself better than it would bond to the rubber that's in there. So by creating that, pushing and getting that barrier in there, it helps out a lot. So, filled the mounts in. That's good to go. I did weld up, put some back braces in there, threw some touch-up paint on there. Some good old Honda touch-up paint. Doesn't look the best, but I don't want it to rust. Then I got this mount in here. Remember I switched to the 40-40 proportioning valve. I actually ended up just making some new lines just to make it fit nicer in there, but that does not pertain to the swap at all. But this does right here. What we're going to do is attach the Hasport mount. Got this one here, goes on the engine side. And I have this one over here that goes on the transmission side. So, a couple things we got to do is when this mount goes on, it's part of the front cover here, which needs an RTV. So when I put these bolts in, I'm going to RTV the bolt itself, all three of these. So when I push them in, it'll have goop all around the threads and the shaft of the bolt itself when I tighten those down, because those have to seal because that oil's all behind there. Also, the other thing, on this transmission mount here, when you get it from Hasport, they give you hardware for all of this stuff here, all these bolts. There's a bolt over here, bolt here, and then there's a stud here, factory stud. Hasport gives you a bolt, and a bolt. I think they want you to take this stud out. We did not take it out on my brother's car, or I'm not going to take it out on mine either. I'm just going to leave it. One thing I did have to do though, I did have to oblong the hole on the mount itself just a teeny bit, because that stud, once it goes into the transmission there's a slight nub where it seats into the transmission, and that nub is bigger than what the hole was. So I just had to notch it out to get it to fit, and I'll show you guys that here. All right, guys, so as you can see, there's this little raised nub right there, and when the mount went on there, see how it doesn't quite fit over that and sit flush? So what I did is I just oblonged that hole a little bit, so when it fits on there, fits right through nice and flush. So that was the only modification I did to the mount, and that's just a personal choice whether you want to do that or not. The only reason I did it was I didn't want to mess with taking the stud out, and I don't know, you can mess with drilling it or you can mess with taking the stud out. It's really just a choice on what you want to do. I didn't want to mess with the transmission and have anything with the threads or anything go bad, so I'm like, I'll just leave what's there and make the mount work. So that's what I did. Totally up to you guys what you want to do. Now that you have your engine mount and transmission mount on your engine and transmission, we want to slide that under the car and start test fitting for the core support, the upper core support. We have to trim that. As you can see on my brother's car, we had to trim right here. We started and we dove in and then kind of went straight across and then cut back out right here at the hood stay and then trim just a touch more This took us like 4 or 5 tries of dropping the engine or the car on the engine and transmission, checking it, marking, trimming, repeat. Luckily, I have my brother's car here for a guide, and you can use that for a guide as well if you're running a TSX intake manifold. If you're not, it's all different. It all depends on what intake manifold you're running as to how much you need to trim your core support. So we want to leave the transmission mount on the transmission just a touch loose. We don't want to fully tighten it down. Same with this mount here. We don't want to fully tighten this one down. We just want to leave it kind of loose, bolted in but loose. Now this transmission mount here, you want to bolt that one in tight, because once the engine and transmission come up in here, you can't get to these bolts here to fully tighten them down. So this is the only mount you want to fully tight. Otherwise, we want to leave everything else bolted down but loose. And the reason for that is we want to be able to move the engine around, the transmission around, and get it to sit where it sits best, so it's not touching or rubbing or causing any issues with anything. So I'm gonna do some pre-cutting on the core support just because I have my brother's car here to do some measurements on and kind of get a rough guide. So here's where I'm at so far. I just thought I'd show you guys. There's my mark right there. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna come over, cut all the way through, and cut off right there. So that's gonna be my rough cut. And then we will throw the engine in there and toss it up and see how we actually did. Hopefully I won't have to take any more. I'd like to just be one and done, but that's probably not going to be the case. I'm probably going to have to adjust it a couple times. So let's get started. Guys, we have the engine and transmission mounted in the fit. Check out the core support here. I did end up taking a little more than I wanted to on the first pass, and I'm glad because everything clears, but at the same time I wanted it nice and tight and clean. You can see one thing I did here is I drilled a hole and then I just ran some vacuum line around it to clear for the brake booster hose. Because as you can see, it is really, really tight fitting in there. Oh. On my brother's car, we just pushed the hose in as far as we could and then ran some vacuum line, and that works fine as well. His looks so much cleaner than mine does. You know, mine's just it's a big notch. You can really see it, but hey, it works. So engine trans is mounted. Like I said, leave all the mounts loose except for that one transmission mount, and then you get it up there and get it mounted. And when you got to put the subframe back up after you get the passenger side and driver side mount on, get the subframe back up in there, then you can do your rear mount. And then when you do the rear mount, you're going to get it in there loosely again. Get it in loose. This is the first mount you're going to want to tighten up, is the rear mount. And you want to get somebody with a pry bar, or if you can do it yourself, get under there with a pry bar and pry the engine towards the bottom of the engine, towards the front of the vehicle to pull it. Use that mount adjustment as much as you can. Pull it all the way forward, and then tighten up that rear mount. And then you can go around and start tightening up the rest of the mounts. That's the way we've done it. Haven't had any issues yet, so that's what we've been doing. Once that's done, you just got to start hooking up all your hoses and wiring and all that stuff, which we'll go over hoses and wiring in another video. We're just getting everything mounted up today. Maybe a couple other things, but yeah, we're making progress, guys. The engine is in the car. We're getting there. All right, guys. Today we are going to talk about axles on the K-Swap Fit. It's pretty simple. We're going to use Acura RSX axles, base model, not the Type S. Type S has a bigger hub. It's like a 36 millimeter. We just want to use the base model, which is like a 32 millimeter. It's the same as a B series axle. A few things you do have to do on your hub, your fit hub. There's a ring there, like a dust shield ring. We have to pop that out. And then the axles themselves, if you do get ABS axles that has the ABS ring, that does have to come out because it hits the hub. Also, there's a dust seal on the axle, which you have to pop off as well. Then there's some confusion going on whether you need to swap the inner cups on the axles or not. I took the inner cups off and measured the actual axle height difference to see. Insert the picture here. Looks like it's about 1/4 inch. So on my brother's car, we actually swapped the cups around, and I'll show you that here. What we did is we took this cup and put it on this axle, and we took this cup and put it on this axle. And we've been running his car like that with no issues whatsoever. We've done that on the other 2 fits we swapped as well, or helped swap. And one of the axles on that, one of the fits went bad. We didn't swap the cup. They just threw an off-the-shelf axle in. It's been driving it like that. It's fine. I'm just going to throw mine in and not swap the cups. So we're going to have my brother's car running with the swapped cups, my car running without the swapped cups. We're going to see if there's any issues that come up on either side and just go from there and kind of test it out, because people have run either way, but we don't really know the results long term of that. So we're going to try to figure it out with our setups here. So we're going to throw these axles in and be one step closer to finishing up the fit. All right, guys, we are talking about shifter boxes and shift cables for your K-Swap Fit. A couple options, really only one solid one that's a bolt-in deal right now. Currently on my brother's car, the first one we did, we are using Accord shift cables with a K-tuned adapter, transmission bracket adapter, and then we modified the cables themselves. We actually cut out like 1 inch or 2 inches difference on each cable, and then re-welded them to shorten them to work with the factory fit box. And that's what my brother's running. And a couple other of the fits and mine, we're going to be using a CRZ shifter box. It's the same shape and design as the fit one, so it bolts right in. And then we're using 9th gen Civic cables, so the 12 to 15 Civic SI cables. Still some issues with that setup. It does bolt right in, but where the shifter itself sits, it's not like when you're in neutral, it's not in center. It's kind of like back where it would be in like 2nd gear. So, I mean, I'm sure you get used to it, but it does work. All the gears will work, everything, it's a bolt-in deal. So that's the bolt-in setup. So that's what I'm going to be running. The only thing difference is I'm going to add a short shifter to mine. Right here we have the 9th gen cables. 9th gen Civic cables, and then here's my short shifter adapter, which you just pop off this old little bushing there, that white bushing, and then you slide this one on, tighten down those Allens, and then you can reconnect and you're good to go. So on this shifter box right here, to make these cables, these 9th gen cables work, this side's no problem, drops right in. This side right here, this opening, well, where's a good spot to see? This opening right here, you have to make it wider to fit the notch right in here that slides in, that notch. So the part that fits through here, we got to open this gap up. So I just took a micrometer and measured the width of it right here, and then just kind of marked on there and just took a file in my little sander and just kind of kept shaving and checking, shaving and checking. But once that's done, everything bolts right in. There's no issues with anything else. Everything will bolt right in. Alright guys, we got the shifter box in with the short shifter, and we got the shift cables in and run. I'll show you guys here what we got going. Alright, so both the cables here, I do have torque solution shifter bushings in there, solid ones. They run in, route back right there. I do have them secured right now on that brake lines right there, zip tied to the brake line, just to keep it out of the way for now until I can get an actual bracket made. But we do have all of the gears here. We got our CRZ box, 9th gen cables, short shifter on there, all the factory hardware to connect the cables to the shifter box works. Bolts all bolt in. We're in neutral now. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and reverse. Those are all the gears. But yeah, everything is working out good. We are one step closer to getting the fit done.